Oh, right? Are we going?
Are we good?
Oh,
Hi.
live. Well, that was kind of scary,
I know.
Kaylee.
That was different. That was a different
that was a little
intro
different
for us.
than
So,
you.
welcome everybody. It's
Hi, everybody.
Val and Roy,
Here.
and we're in a different room at the Lansing
Am
Creativity
I
Center.
on? Did we turn this on?
Yeah, I turned.
Okay,
I
sorry.
turned them on. I'm
Sometimes
pretty sure.
I-
Kaylee says yes. We're good.
Okay, thank you.
In a different classroom. Val's teaching a 3-day fusing class, so that room's kind of preoccupied, and we didn't want to go in the other room, so we're in this room. This is where we do our flame working at, but I think we've been in here before.
Yeah.
But today we are going to talk about some,
Fusing.
fusing, right?
Yep,
Intro or
that's it.
beginning to fusing or something. So I think we've done something similar, but we get asked about this a lot, and
Well, we do. We felt like we've done quite a few things on specific things, and maybe more geared towards people who already do some fusing. So we kind of started thinking we ought to probably go back and revisit. Just the basics is just kind of what we're doing. Just
for our new friends.
right?
One of those that's new and joining us. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out. You can make a comment in the section below, or you can always email us at facebook@delphiglass.com or message us on Instagram and some other thing. Facebook, YouTube. Whatever.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah, we're everywhere.
did it.
Man, we're everywhere.
Well,
I did that
kinda.
without notes, isn't that?
Kind of.
Sort of.
Okay.
It's only been a few years. Okay.
Okay, where
so-
are we starting? We're starting
let's start with just what's your
is-
definition of fusing?
what is
What is
fusing?
fusing?
What is it?
What is it?
It's-
the eternal question. Why is fusing?
Melting glass, right?
that's it.
Melting glass to glass most of the time, right?
Yep. So if we have a couple of pieces of glass, Kaylee's a little further away from us today than
Separate
usual.
them right now.
And then so
yeah.
two separate pieces of glass, right? If we put those together in the kiln, get the kiln hot enough, it fuses, right? So this piece is fused.
To what we call a full fuse, this piece is.
Yes, yeah, good definition. Yeah, we use some terminology in the fusing world, like Val said, full fuse, just to make it easier. So when you're talking to other fusers or other glass people, they have an idea of kind of like what you mean by fusing, right?
Right. And there's different degrees, right? There's fusing till things are completely smooth and flat, or there's fusing to what could be described as what we call a tack fuse, where there's still lots of texture still involved, even though the glass is melted. We haven't melted it all the way down. So there's lots of places to stop between basically a tack fuse and a full fuse. There's some different, right? Some
Yep,
different,
I would say that. Yep.
Yeah.
So we have some sample tiles here. I don't know how well Kaylee can show them, but so this is what Val's talking about when she's talking about a tack fuse. If you look at this piece, so there's 2 layers of clear, right? So what we would call a standard thickness, 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeter each, if you're interested. And then on the top is a bunch of accessory type glass. There's different size frits, glass stringer, little pieces of glass, and what's called confetti down here. And so this is what we would call a tack fuse. And you can see also there's like a temperature range, because it's not always just about a specific temperature.
And that's a little hard to
Would you
read. So
agree?
if you
Sorry?
are seeing it, it's 1250 to 1300.
Yeah.
And it's really pretty, it's pretty crisp, right? It looks almost like these pieces are glued onto the surface. That's where, kind of tacked on the surface. So that's where the term comes from, tack fused.
So I'm just going to, I shouldn't, but now I started. So
You started.
contour, which one of those would you say is a contour
Well,
fuse?
contour fuse. Yeah, so Val and I we've been fusing for a little while. And when we first started, people used the terms full fuse, like Val did. And here's an example of that one, of that same tile. You can see how everything's really pretty smooth and flat. And tack fuse, that were the only 2 terminologies we really used. And then somewhere over the course of time, people started using the term contour fuse, which sort of describes in between those 2. But as Val was kind of pointing out a little while ago, it's a pretty wide range, right? So your definition of contour is probably different for most people.
Yeah, and so that's why sometimes in the classes we teach, mostly you and I, deal more with temperatures. What happens at what temperature? So what can you expect at what temperature you're going to take the glass to seems to me to be a little less arbitrary than just saying contour fuse, right?
I'm with you.
Because I think a contour could mean anything from like this kind of raw tack all the way up to this one that's the 13 to 1350 to 1400, where there is still texture, but it's considerably less than this one. So there's a few different versions in between a tack and a full. So where's, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We like to kind of deal more with what happens at what temperature.
Yeah,
So.
I always tell people that, I know for me when I'm teaching classes, I say it's really not about my opinion about what I think a tack fuse is or a contour fuse is or a full fuse. It's really your opinion, right, of what it should be or what it should look like. And so as Val's kind of talking about, so you should know what temperature to take the glass to get the look you want, right? And then the other part of that, part B of that, might be also what kiln you're using, because we fired these in a specific kiln here, and I mean there's no guarantee if you use the same temperatures that we did that you get the exact same look. So with the kiln you're using, every kiln's a little different. Would you agree?
Right,
Like
I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think sometimes we should emphasize that temperature is temperature, right? But I think there's variances in the kilns. Like we know, personally, we have a kiln that runs about 15 degrees.
Yeah, I would say 10 or 15 degrees
hotter than it reads.
Yep.
So that's, kind of a calibration issue. I don't know if we should fix that or not.
Could be just a manufacturing issue too, because I've noticed that particular brand
tends to seem to run a little hotter.
A little hotter than I expect, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, but
but
again,
people are going to ask, what brand is it?
Oh, we don't want to
gosh,
say.
I mean, I don't want to say what brand it is, but
because it's fine. It's like any.
it's
like any kiln. It's not a flaw necessarily.
No,
it's just you have to learn your kiln. That's all. You know.
The other thing too, real quick, I'll try to make this quick for Val's sake, is that I teach.
Thank you.
I teach some classes out at the Glass Craft Expo in Vegas every year, and I have the luxury of having 10 kilns there. And when all 10 kilns are plugged in, so they're just plugged in
from the same manufacturer.
Yeah, from the same exact manufacturer, and they're not running. They're just again, so they should be just reading the air temperature in the room, right? And of those 10 kilns, I remember when I checked last year that only 2 of them displayed the exact same temperature out of the 10. And the difference was 10 degrees. I mean, from the lowest to the highest was about 10 degrees difference.
Yeah.
And it was the same model, same manufacturer. So that's sort of my point too. Is you just got to get used to the kiln that you have access to, whether it's one you own or one you're using at your fusing club place or whatever. They don't all like the same.
But and then to throw back to trying to learn what you can expect at what temperatures, then that's how you go forward. If you're finding that really at 1350 or so, you should have some visual change. It shouldn't be smooth or anything, and you do yours in your kiln at 1350, and you take it out, and it's almost flat. Then your kiln's running a little hotter than what that, don't you think?
Yeah, so you just adjust. So instead of going to 1350, you might go to 1340 or 1335. One of the things, that Val and I have found out that fusing is a lot of experimenting, and it would be nice if it was always just following a schedule and the piece come out looking like whatever, but unfortunately, it's not always like
that cut and dry.
Yeah, especially for you newbies. It is. There's going to be at the beginning a little bit of experimenting where you figure out, what temperature my kiln does, or probably more importantly, what temperature you like for how it's going to appear. And so these tiles that we have displayed here, this is a great way if you have a new kiln or again are just new into this. Is just doing some test tiles. So pick a temperature, right? Put some pieces on top so you can see how they kind of react to the heat, and then fire it, and then go up 50 degrees or 25 degrees and do more tiles. You should write the temperatures on the tile. That way you'll know, if you want what I might call a contour fuse, right? This one says 1350, so great. You got to...
That's your ballpark.
Yeah, that's where you need to go to get this sort of a look.
And keep track of it.
Yep.
Write it down.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a great... I have a spiral bound notebook at home, and it's got my firing schedules written down in them. It's really a good idea to do that, so
I have a lot
can
of
keep track of them. So
never can find the one.
yeah, where are they? Where do you wear this written down? I got them all up here, like every single one of them. So.
Okay, and then I kind of interrupted you.
No,
and then we
good.
went on to the tiles.
Yeah, we went to the tiles. So.
But we were starting with the actual
kind of definition type stuff, right?
Cut the glass to fuse the blank together, and then that would go.
Yeah, onto a form, and then we would slump it is the term. So, if you put this piece of glass on top of there, put it in the kiln, get it till it gets soft. Then it would
magically turn into
Look
that.
at that, just like
cooking
that.
show.
Yep.
And it slumps into the mold is how that we refer to that. This particular mold is ceramic. Again, I'm not sure. Somebody asked me just yesterday what kind of clay it is. I don't know. I'm not a ceramic person, so I don't know what the clay body is that they use for these. But whatever it is, it holds up to the temperatures we're slumping at. So I guess it's really not that big, and they're really durable. I mean, if you take care, as long as you don't drop it on the floor or something, right?
They last a long
pretty
time.
good long time.
Yep. So that's a general process.
Yes.
Fuse your glass together. We do that because the slumping temperature is much cooler than the full fuse temperature. In the full fuse temperature, to get to this, that we're going to 1450, we really need things to get molten and actually basically become one.
Yep.
Those two pieces over there now become one piece. And so now we can do it. But now when we slump it, we only go to around 1250 Fahrenheit. Because basically what we're wanting to do, we want the glass to start to stretch. We don't want to get molten and have it get all gooey and
Yep.
because it'll just puddle in the bottom of the mold and you'll have a real fat bottom and no sides. Ask us how we know.
We know from personal. I know I tell people all the time in class. Everything that Val and I in our classes that we teach, we've learned from personal experience.
Yes.
So,
So 1250 we found to be a pretty common
It's good,
slumping
yeah.
temperature. And so often what we're hoping that we're getting the glass to a temperature where it's just soft enough to sort of stretch into the void, the unsupported part. So that's why we can't do them both at the same time, which is
Yeah.
which would be nice if we could.
Man,
but
it
we
would be
couldn't.
nice. We cannot.
We
Nope.
could not get the glass to melt together and be smooth and seamless and slump at the same time. It's just
Yep. It's two different temperatures, and as Val's pointing out, it's about 200 degrees difference. And I mean, it really does make a difference. It makes a huge difference.
Well, sometimes, like we talked about, that 10 or 15 degrees can make a difference
Yeah.
in the visual look.
In the
too.
visual looks,
Yeah.
that's for sure,
Yeah.
right? Especially if you're kind of, particular is what I like to say, right? So, and I know I am, so I'm always real, I've
Is
been
that the word you use?
particular, yeah,
Okay.
do you like that?
Is that what you are? Particular?
Yeah,
okay.
that's what I say.
Okay.
Well, if you're kind of a glass nerd or glass geek like I am, I get real kind of hung up sometimes on just the subtle difference between just a few degrees and what that look might be like. So,
Yeah.
it just depends on how, like I said, particular is the word I use.
That's good. It's a good word.
Okay.
I like it.
So you
Okay,
want to talk
then
about the drape thing? You want to
I
talk
don't
about
know.
that real quick? Or let's talk about the mold and just what's on the mold, right? So one of the things is that, so as we're heating up the glass, right? So, didn't grab any fiber paper.
There's some right under my feet.
Oh.
What kind do we
I
want?
just wanted the thin fire. But
Oh.
That's right. We got some somewhere. We'll grab some. Anyways, what I wanted to talk about was, so as we've been mentioning, around the mid to high 1200s, glass starts getting sticky. That's when it starts fusing. And so, so these two pieces obviously would stick together, but the glass would also stick to whatever it comes in contact with. So like the shelf, for example. So we need some kind of barrier on the shelf so the glass doesn't stick. And what we use often is something called kiln wash, which we have some mixed up here. It is a powder that you add water to it. The instructions are on the container. We sell probably 3 different, brands of kiln wash. So whatever one works, they all work. They do put a dye in them. This one has a dye in it, just so when you paint it on, you can see where it's going. And we would then paint this on the 5 thin coats is the magic number onto the shelf, so the glass doesn't stick to it. Another thing we use is what Val just brought in. This is, so I use the term fiber paper, kiln paper, shelf paper. I use those all interchangeably. Do you?
Yes.
I know some people
I do
don't.
too.
Some people get really like,
Oh,
because
really?
I've showed that to me before, and they're like, "Oh, I thought you meant kiln paper." I go, "Okay, I thought that's what that was." Sorry. This is actually this is a brand of Bullseye called Thin Fire. But it's one of the thinnest ones made, and it comes thicker than that, right? The fiber paper comes thicker than that, or shelf paper, or kiln paper. Like I said, you'll hear all those 3 terminologies. It's made of ceramic fibers, so the glass doesn't stick to it. It's one that we use a lot around here. In fact, almost exclusively use that around here. Our advice, though, would be, kiln wash your shelf, right, always. And then if you're using paper, just cut the paper a hair bigger than the project you're working on. So you don't have to cover the entire shelf for like one piece or something.
Are you saying they should use both?
I tell people they should always kiln wash their shelves.
I do too. Well, we differ apparently a bit on this because I do too. I always kiln wash my shelves, but I don't. If they're kiln washed, I don't use paper.
It's funny, I use paper and not the kiln wash.
Yeah. So I mean, there's different schools of thought on that.
Yeah.
But if you kiln wash your shelf, then you're good to go for multiple firings. I mean, I think at home mine's probably been kiln washed already 8 months, and I haven't redone it. It depends on how much you fire it too.
Yeah, and how hot you fire is the other magic thing with the
so
kiln wash. But
it's always a good idea to keep paper on hand, because if your kiln wash looks a bit dried out or something, at least you're not dead in the water. You can throw your paper down.
Yeah, I think that's why I use paper a lot of times, because I'm not 100% sure how good the particular kiln wash is on the shelf, and I'm slightly impatient. So when I want to fuse something, I just want to fuse it and not have to worry about, do I need to recoat the shelf or something?
And the other part, why I think you like this too, if I'm not mistaken, is it's very smooth. So it makes the back of your piece
really
very smooth. So sometimes shelves can have a bit of a texture to them or something, and sometimes if you don't like that texture, it's going to come out on the back of your pieces of glass. So throwing the paper down also kind of helps with that, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, and also sometimes opaque glasses in particular, if you're firing at hotter temperatures, it has a tendency to stick to the kiln wash sometimes. Usually it's not a big deal. If anything, you might have to clean the kiln wash off. But again, for me, it's something I'm just trying to avoid, to be honest. But you said something really good that I wanted to revisit was fusing. It's a lot of opinion, to be honest. Fusing is. I mean, there are some like rules and some truths to fusing that you have to kind of be aware of and follow along. But for the most part, a lot of it is.
A lot of it for us is just personal experience.
Yeah.
So, if you have something happen and you try to decide what it was that made your glass stick or something, then you're going to do a little extra next time, right?
Yeah, to make sure that
to prepare for it not to. But I think that's what you say. There's lots of places that opinions can vary, but we get to the same end.
I would agree with that.
And then
I think that's true.
So it doesn't make one way right or one way wrong. It's just, if it works for you, it works.
Yeah, we're pretty. I know Val and I are pretty similar in how we approach. I'm pretty sure in our fusing, I know our schedules are very similar. Maybe it's just because we've worked together for a while, but part of it is too. Just we've experimented and we bounce stuff off each other. Like, hey, this didn't work out, so why do you think it didn't? And then you have to come up with some kind of solution. Or reason.
Well, and that's what I say too. 25 years ago, we couldn't Google it. So I mean, we just.
What about YouTube?
Well, they weren't really that prominent at that point either. So.
So we couldn't do those, so we just had to figure it out.
But that's where trial and error comes in, and you always, it's really not fun to have a piece not turn out, but. If you look at it right, it's always a huge learning curve. You always learn something that can then help you down the road. So,
Great. We have a question from Catherine. Okay, hold on. Here we go. Do you use kiln wash and kiln paper with ceramic molds? What do you recommend for small molds with details so that the glass won't stick to the mold?
Great one. So they're talking about molds. I mean, so the molds are kiln wash. So we have one here that.
Well, they don't come kiln wash.
No. You have to kiln wash them. So so this one's been kiln wash, right? Slumping molds. So you can see the kiln wash is on there. But once it's fired, this one's been fired, and if you look at this side in particular, you can see where the kiln wash is dripped on there, right? As I mentioned, the dye in the kiln wash burns out, but there's kiln wash all over this, and we would just use kiln wash. The issue with paper is, and I know people have done this before, but I don't get it. When the glass slumps, the paper wrinkles, and then that can affect your piece, which, again, I don't know, or I think it's a waste of paper, honestly.
I think it's a waste of paper.
If you do this correctly, if you kiln wash these ceramic molds, and then again, if you're slumping in the 1200 range,
shelf, which is ceramic usually.
Oh yeah. But I was sorry, I was just talking about the molds in particular because we're going.
We'll go to shelf in a second because there's another question.
Yeah,
too.
because in the mold we're only going to 1200 or maybe 1250 at the hottest, right? And those temperatures aren't really going to wear down the kiln wash a whole lot. You should be able to get a bullseye says 30 times with their kiln wash.
I think so.
And I think it's more like 40 or 50 to be honest. I mean firings without having to re-kiln wash it. So again, if you follow the directions on the kiln wash and do it correctly, it really should last you a really long time before you have to kiln wash this. But
okay, and she mentioned small details.
the molds, yeah.
The molds.
Let's talk about casting. Too.
Yeah,
Are we talking about?
yeah.
Are we talking about textured molds? I think it sounds like she said.
The small details made me think of casting.
And casting molds too, right? So it would be the same deal, right?
Yeah, it'd be the
either
same.
textured or small
Yeah,
details,
it would be the
right?
same. So there's the.
So here's.
There's little jewelry pieces, right?
So these are a little, and again, the difference is, Kaylee sort of mentioned it, right? This is a casting mold. This is a slumping mold. And the difference is temperature. As I mentioned many times, right, we are slumping in the 1200 range, but we're fusing in the 1400 range. And so when we cast in the molds, we're doing more like a full fuse. So we're definitely 1450, maybe even a little bit hotter than that. The glass manufacturers go to 1480 as a full fuse. So we're somewhere in there, pretty hot. And if you kiln wash this type of mold, the glass does have a tendency to stick to the kiln wash. So what we use on these kind of molds is something called boron nitride. This is just one brand that we sell here called Zip. And this is what we would use to spray on the molds. Now, it is... if you have a brand new mold, they recommend 2 light coats, and then every time you use the mold, you would spray it with 1 light coat. So it is. My advice is don't use it on your slumping molds. I mean, does it work? Yes, but it's a total waste of the boron nitride, which is expensive. A lot more expensive than kiln wash. So really only for casting molds, right?
And I don't texture molds.
Or the texture molds, yeah. Because I say it's a temperature thing, right? So if you're ever going to fusing temperatures or near fusing temperatures and using a casting mold or a texture mold, then you need to use boron. If you're slumping and if you're in the slumping range temperature, 1200, 1250, then kiln wash is the answer to that.
Yeah. And I was just going to point out, because I don't think it really says anywhere, or if it does now, it didn't used to when these started to become kind of popular. We have just a kind of a cheap, soft bristle paintbrush.
Yep.
And I just dust them out every time I use them, because I've noticed that we have some for the classroom that are caking.
Yeah, I do them like every 3 or 4
yeah,
times.
but I used to do them too.
Periodically.
But I think there's something
knock a little bit of that loose boron
that goes, and I also think there's some kind of a breakdown in its buffering ability, because we started having them stick
to the,
if we weren't.
It sticks to the
rushing them
buildup,
out.
I think, right? So especially the texture molds, because the boron will settle into all the valleys, right? So it is a good idea to brush them out periodically.
Well, we're still talking about that. Jay's question is, what about kiln washing the bottom of the kiln if you are using a shelf?
I say no. I do. I just say.
Oh, she's just going for it.
Yeah, I am, because that just sounds like a nightmare to me.
Time, to be honest, I know the kiln manufacturers. Perhaps they recommend it, but
I think they do.
But I think it's probably in there.
I don't think so much anymore. But I think that you think about it's eventually going to get so dried out that it's going to start flaking and blistering, and then you've got to try to scrape it out of the bottom of your kiln, and I just don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
I will say that maybe there is a time where the bottom of your kiln maybe comes into play, like if you're doing a tall drape or something. Or
I was thinking like a pot melt situation.
A pot melt in the situation where you're not sure how much glass is going to melt out, and you can't really calculate that.
So it might go over the
possibly goes
shelf.
over the shelf to hit the bottom. Just throw a piece of paper down. You'll know if you're doing something a bit
unusual.
suspect.
That's a little
a bit suspect that could maybe go awry. Just throw a piece of paper down on the bottom of your kiln, and then you can just vacuum it right out. But I say personally,
I think the risk is
say
really
no.
low.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. I don't do it. I have kilns at home, and I haven't. Well, all the kilns you can't see them, but they're in the room behind Kaylee. That
none of them do.
Then none of them we've kiln washed the bottom. And it's never been an issue,
never.
like ever. So, but good question. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
What else we got? Oh, you were going to show, so, well, we did casting mold stuff.
Yeah, we're
Just
just
slumping and casting. Let's talk draping.
Oh yeah, we have a draped piece here. So, yeah, so Val and I are old school, and so we use the term draping, which some people still do, but I find lots of people don't use it. They just say slumping for every time they're trying to change the shape of something, right? Using the heat to
well,
affect
we
it,
always,
but-
yeah, we've always considered slumping is into usually,
what I would say.
draping is over something. And so this is over.
This is
Draping.
over, yeah.
This is draping.
That's what I would, it's a good observation. That's what I would call it. So if we take this piece that we fused, right, and set it on there, and then it gets hot enough and comes down and forms into this.
Ta-da. And then you turn it upside down.
And then, yeah.
And tell them, we usually use paper for that.
I do use paper.
I know.
So this is, so here's
Which
the
a
thing.
lot of people don't. You could use the boron for
I've had
this
some
too.
people, I've had some people tell me they've had problems when they just use paper.
Well, I think they're going too hot.
They're going too hot. Thank you. That's what I thought too. So this is stainless steel, right? So that's the difference, right? So typically we say you slump into ceramic and drape over stainless, and it has to do with just simple expansion and contraction, right? The metal is going to shrink faster than the glass, so it should be easier to pull it off. In this situation, the glass shrinks more than the ceramic, so it should be easier to pop it out, right? That's kind of the thinking on that. And then so you could paint kiln wash on this, which I can tell you is a really a bear to do. What people usually do is just use the boron on it. That's a great idea. You'll see ours. We haven't done anything because I think Val and I do the same thing. In fact, I have a piece going on next door right now that's I'm draping. And I just cut a piece of paper. So I cut a piece of paper that's, again, just a hair bigger than the project. So, maybe a half inch or a quarter inch all the way around. I would cut it, set it on there, and then when this drapes, as the glass falls down, it takes the paper with it, then the paper acts as a barrier. But I think Val had a really, really good point, is that you can't go too hot with this, because then the paper really starts breaking down, and then you might run the risk of exposing the metal to the glass. But I tell you, I've done this hundreds of times, and I've never stuck the glass to it. So I guess apparently I'm doing all right. But I'm below 1250 usually. I find 1250 to be too hot for this.
Yeah, this is, I mean, like you said, in our heads, we think of this as not really slumping. We think of it as draping.
Yeah, it's totally draping.
And then draping, to me, is also an unsupported way of slumping. So if you're slumping into a mold, eventually, if it goes a little too far, gets a little too soft, the bottom of the mold stops it. But when you're draping, there's nothing there to stop it. So that's so that's why in that case we factor in even kind of the weight of the piece and gravity. And then that usually means we don't have to go to the 1250. We can get away with going, more like 1200 or.
Yeah, this one was like 1220. I'm pretty sure because I made that piece, so it was around 1220. It's when I did that one out. But you're right. I mean, sometimes even 1200 works. That's what I'm doing next door in a bigger one. I have one that's about it's a 12-inch. No, it's a 9-inch circle. So bigger than this, and so I'm dropping the temperature because, as Val pointed out, we're dealing with gravity, and so there's more mass, right, more weight to the bigger piece, so it's going to drop sooner than something
share the
heavier.
piece so we can share the picture.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll show it to you. It's students' work, but anyways, she won't care. If Carol's watching,
She is.
it's her piece. So oh gosh, I shouldn't have said that. I was doing it right now. I am watching it, Carol. If you're
Carol, no, he had it done. It was done a couple days ago.
That's right. I mean, all right, we're going to end this thing. So
She knows you.
I can
She's
go
not
get Carol's
believing
piece, right? So we should probably talk about a couple of the quarter-inch rule. Do you want to do that as we kind of close up, or the
if you want
fusing
to.
thing? I do actually. I
We
think
didn't
that's kind of
do
important.
coefficients, or I don't know.
Yeah, or coefficiency.
What do
Has
you want
anyone
us
asked
to
us
do?
that? Let's.
No, I have not seen any questions for coefficients, but let's just really quick say what it is, and then you guys can close with your quarter of an inch.
Okay. Yep. So for fusing, we're using a very specific glass for this purpose, right? So it's not just stained glass or not any glass. We're just finding and trying to fuse with. All the glasses we're showing you here on the table were made specifically for that purpose, and they're in a real simple term. We say they're compatible, right? They're made so that they can melt together without any issues. There is one factor that we look at determining that, and it's the expansion rate. And so the glass companies often put that number down as the expansion rate.
It's referred to, but yeah, we
Yeah.
refer it just based on the number, right?
Based on
And
the
then
number,
there's
yeah.
two.
Yeah, so there's two for fusion.
Company.
90 and 96. Well, I'm stumbling across it because
I know.
it's not just about the expansion rate, right? I mean, it has to do with other things like viscosity.
yeah.
But
For us.
but just to make it simple, right? So everyone understands what you're talking about, right? Then we just use the assigned kind of numbers to them. So there's again 96 out there, right? And so we have Oceanside, Yakagani, Wismach glass companies making a 96 compatible glasses. In 90, well, Bullseye doesn't call their glass 90. They refer to it as Bullseye compatible. And then there's the Delphi glass, superior glass, that's a 90 that's compatible with the Bullseye. So two groups. One isn't better than the other. They're just, nothing really. I tell people it's more aesthetic, I think,
Yeah,
right?
there's
Like
more.
the color palettes are different. The styles of glass are a little different.
Yeah, but we're a firm believer that, when people ask us, because they do ask us often, well, which is the better? There isn't
neither
one
one's
better
better.
than the other, but there are differences in what's available in both. So the palette, the color, patterns, some patterns that are made in some of the 96 lines, they don't even make them in the 90s. So, if that's something you love, that pattern, then you're going to have to go 96. But otherwise, and like you and I, we have them all at home. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
we-
use
Let's
both.
talk about that then.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you can't mix them. You can't use them together. And I know the numbers sound really close, right? 90, 96, but you can't mix them. They will just break. They'll crack, fall
they
apart.
stress.
There's so much stress in them that they'll crack.
Is that what you
So-
meant? Okay.
That's
Good,
it.
good, good. Did you want to see these two little samples real quick, or no? Does that matter to anybody?
Well, now that you showed them, you better just
Oh,
show
let's
them.
not show them. No, these are so these are two tiles that we made here, and we fired them. So we took them to our full fuse temperature, which for us here is like 1450, and there's one of them's 96 and one's 90. So they're fired at the same time, same kiln, same temperature, and there's not a huge difference between them if you really look at them. As far as how they look. I mean, I know the colors are a little different, only because, as I mentioned earlier, the palettes are slightly different from one. But my point is sort of, they fuse about the same, right? I mean, there's not really much difference between them. So if you could see a visual difference between these two, then that's great. I show these in class, and I think it's like 9 out of 10 people can't tell the difference between them as far as how they're fused.
Well, and the other thing about that is that they were in the same kiln, right?
Yeah, same
So
kiln.
it's the same firing schedule, and often people feel like 90 and 96 have to have different firing
Yeah, exactly.
schedules,
That's
and
my point,
We
sort
don't.
of, right?
We really don't. We don't kind of do that. We kind of because it is.
They
it's,
don't really need that. I mean,
It's it's all soft glass, so it's all going to melt relatively around the same temperature. So that's not the problem. But when it cools is the problem. If the two are not compatible, when it cools, they'll just cool at their own rates, which are too different, and that's what creates the stress.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
more than
we've
the
got
cooling.
one more question before we move
Yeah.
on. Pat says, I have a hard time finding the center on the mold for draping when I put a flat piece
Me
on.
too.
Any tips?
Me too.
Same.
Yeah, I can tell you that I do this. I don't have anything here to show you, but I'll use this. This is what I do. So I set it on there. I take usually a pencil, and I just come underneath it like this until I feel it touch, and then I know, that's got to show that much space, and then from there sometimes you wiggle it around. You have to just check 3 sides, and you don't have to check the 4th side, and that will be even.
And that works pretty good.
That's what I do.
The other thing you can do, and what I do, but it has to be transparent.
Yeah, I was gonna say if it's transparent,
just
then
kind
you
of
can-
put your hand over the paper on top of the mold and crease it, and then you can see. If you can see through your glass, that makes it easy.
Yeah,
when you can't, that's the method I use too.
Yeah, I have had, so the other thing that people have done, again, if you're using the paper technique, is you can, with a pencil, you can trace this out onto the paper, and then you can find the center, and then what people will do is use a little bit of glue, actually, like the bullseye glass tack, and then glue the paper to this, right in the center, so you know right where the center is, and now you can just take this and line it up to the paper.
Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it seems like just a tiny more bit work for me, so I just use a pencil mark because I find that quicker. But that's probably a lot more accurate. So that was a good question, though.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Tons of good questions today.
Yeah, nice. Or the other thing I've had people do is like back to the gluing thing. So is that they will sometimes literally use a little bit of glue to glue that on. But the problem with that is you have to let the glue dry, and it's usually overnight. And I've already told you I'm not that patient, so I have to get it in the kiln, right? So.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about just one. I guess one more thing before we have to go was one of the rules in fusing, or something that you need to be aware of, is that glass wants to be 1/4 of an inch thick. When we, I was looking for your green tiles.
Did I put them on the thing?
I thought they were here. I didn't see them. Sorry, I don't see them. Sorry. So 1/4 inch rule is that the glass wants to be 1/4 of an inch. So for the most part, the glass manufacturers are making the glass 1/8 of an inch thick. So 2/8 of an inch would be 1/4 of an inch, right? So one of the things I just want to show you quickly is that, so you can see the raw glass is the exact same size as the fused piece, and that's intentional, right? I mean, it's really important that we are aware of the size of the things we're making, because when we're slumping glass in particular, the glass can't be bigger than the opening of the mold. So if you know that glass wants to be 1/4 of an inch, it really helps you minimize any surprises when you look in the kiln the next day. And so, yeah, we have some tiles here that kind of show that.
That's the
So this is the 2 layers, right? So it's, I think, a 4-inch square at 2 layers, and then.
So that's pretty much the way we cut it, and it's so
Yep.
then when it fused, it kept its same footprint, right?
Yep.
So all these squares were identical in size when we started.
Yeah, this one was, so they're all 4-inch squares, but this is only a single layer, and you can see what happens to the single layer. You can see how it's starting to pull in, and the edges heat up faster, so the edge is thicker, and it's pulling towards the center to get to 1/4 of an inch. Now, it's not 1/4 of an inch in the middle, mainly just because we didn't let it,
Yeah,
we didn't
let
give it
it get
enough
there.
time, right? So that's where time comes in. And then this one, of course, is, 3 layers. So look what happens to the 3. Oh, look at that. That's
that.
dramatic. So the 3 layers is spreading out to get to 1/4 of an inch. And the other thing you can notice too is look how distorted it gets and doesn't want to be so square anymore. See, it really
Round
wants
up.
to turn into a circle, which is what it's trying to do, is turn into a circle. So as that spreads out, it tries to spread into a circle. So 1/4 inch rule, we kind of call it, or if you're a metric person, they refer to it as a 6 millimeter rule.
Yeah.
So we're not saying the glass always has to be 2 layers, but you just need to be aware of if you're making something that's less than 2 layers or more than 2 layers. I mean, Val's got a great example here of this piece that is, so the red, right, is bigger than the white piece, and so the red's 1 layer, and so she didn't fire it super hot because she didn't want the red to start pulling in and shrinking as it tried to get to 1/4 of an inch. So you didn't do quite a full fuse,
No,
right? You
no.
were just under that somewhere.
Yeah.
Someday maybe we'll talk about the photo on there. I think we've done it before, haven't we?
We have
So if you want to
go to those channels we mentioned earlier. YouTube. You tell me YouTube's a good place to find all of our.
Yeah, and then here's another piece we wanted to show you just real quick. That again, this is 2 layers, right? So similar to, it's clear, and then it's this clear with a white stringer through it. And then this is some glass line paint, which I'm pretty sure we've done a video
on that as well.
Also.
Yeah.
But one reason why
We can always
people
revisit these.
we might revisit them if people ask us questions, or more questions. But these are the one reason why we paint on this is so we can keep it at a 1/4 of an inch, right? The thickness is at 1/4 inch, and we don't have to worry about getting too big and spreading or something. So.
And then this is just another use of the fiber paper, the thicker fiber
Yeah.
paper. So we just wanted
really
to
very nice.
kind of put out some examples of, there's just so many directions you can go.
Yeah, so
the
the pocket or the cavity, if you can see that, was created with the fiber paper being, as Val said, the thicker fiber paper between 2 layers of glass, right? So a little more, intermediate or advanced type fusing techniques, but
it's fun, and if you've not ever tried it, hopefully this was a bit inspiring,
hopefully,
because
yeah.
it is fun, and it's, like I said, there's just, so we didn't even show, well, we kind of did the jewelry, but...
Yeah, you saw some of the jewelry pieces, right?
But
So
there's lots of
they're-
different kinds of molds, and...
Yeah, they're fun. Well, if you have questions after watching the video or later on, you're more than welcome to reach out to us.
Yep.
We're happy to answer them. Or if you have ideas
Suggestions,
for other
yeah.
things you'd like to see us do,
We're game.
we're here to serve.
And we'll also maybe really quick mention Glass Getaway that's coming up.
Oh yeah, so in June we're going to be doing a bunch of classes. So we call it almost like a glass vacation. Glasscation, is that a word? I just made that up.
We've used it. I don't know if it's a
I
word.
didn't make
or
that
not.
up. Okay, so it's like a glass vacation in June. This year it's the 13th to the 22nd, I think.
That sounds about right.
Right? We don't have the classes up yet. It'll be soon though. By the end of the month we'll have them all up. It's a bunch of our in-house instructors teaching. So for 11 days we teach sometimes 3 or even 4 classes going on at once. And we try to keep a lot of them half-day kind of stuff. Some are a little bit longer, but just to get an opportunity to come in and take a variety of our stained glass, mosaics, fusing, flame working, glass blowing, right? So all those things.
We do get a lot of people from out of town, out of state, and so this is our attempt, right, to make the trip worthwhile. Because often, to come any length of a place for like a 2-hour class, but so this way it gives people some options. They can maybe take advantage of being gone for a day or 2 or something, and really pack some classes in. So,
but we'll have more information on that coming real soon. So
hopefully by the end of the month.
Yeah, that's the plan.
hopefully.
Well, thanks for joining us today.
Yep, thanks.